The night smelled like rain and hot asphalt, the kind that clung to your lungs and made every breath feel heavier than it should. Amir tightened his grip on his daughter's small hand as they stepped out of the bus, the city lights flickering like tired eyes around them. Layla was 6, all elbows and knees and too much curiosity for her own good. Her backpack bounced against her spine as she skipped once, then twice, before remembering she was supposed to stay close. "Slow down," Amir said gently. His voice always softened when he spoke to her, as if the world might crack if he didn't. "I am slow," she protested, though she obediently matched her steps to his. They were late. Amir knew it the moment he checked the time on his phone. The diner where he washed dishes closed in 20 minutes, and the walk from the bus stop took at least 15. He could already hear his manager sigh, see the look that said, "Again?" But he had promised Layla pancakes on the way home. He had promised her a lot of things since her mother died, promises he tried desperately to keep, even when the hours stretched thin and the money stretched thinner. They turned onto a narrower street, one Amir usually avoided after dark, but tonight the shortcut tempted him. It would save 5 minutes. 5 minutes could mean the difference between a warning and losing the job altogether. The street was quiet in the uneasy way that set your nerves on edge. Closed storefronts lined the sidewalk, their metal shutters tagged with graffiti, their windows dark and blind. Halfway down the block, Amir heard raised voices, 2 men, sharp and angry. He slowed, instinctively pulling Layla closer. Ahead, under the weak glow of a flickering street lamp, a woman was pressed back against a brick wall. Her purse lay open on the ground, its contents spilled like an accusation. One man stood too close, his body angled in a way that made Amir's stomach twist. The other hovered near the sidewalk, watching the ends of the street. "Come on," Amir whispered, starting to turn away. Layla tugged at his hand. "Daddy, don't look," he said, his heart pounding. He knew what he was seeing. He knew what could happen if he got involved. He had learned long ago that the world did not reward men like him for doing the right thing. Then the woman cried out, not loud but sharp, a sound that cut straight through him, and Layla stopped walking altogether. "Daddy, please help her," she said. Her voice was small but firm. Amir looked down at her face, pale in the streetlight, her eyes wide not with fear but with certainty. She wasn't asking a question. She was stating a fact, the way children sometimes did, as if the right choice were obvious and unavoidable. "I can't," he whispered, though he didn't believe it even as he said it. He thought of bills stacked on the kitchen table, of the manager's warnings, of what could happen if the men had knives or worse. He thought of Layla standing beside him, of what would happen to her if he didn't come home. The man closest to the woman laughed, a low, ugly sound. Amir felt something shift inside him then, something old and stubborn that had survived grief and exhaustion and fear. "Stay here," he told Layla, his voice suddenly steady. He unclipped the small emergency whistle from her backpack and pressed it into her hand. "If anything happens, you blow this, as hard as you can. Do you understand?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Amir stepped forward before his courage could evaporate. "Hey!" he called out. His voice echoed down the street, louder than he expected. "Leave her alone." The men turned. For a split second, surprise flickered across their faces. Then the closer one sneered. "Mind your business, old man. She's not interested," Amir said, planting his feet. His hands were shaking, but he held them loose at his sides. "Walk away." The second man glanced past him, his gaze landing on Layla. Something changed in his expression. "You got a kid with you?" he muttered. "Which is exactly why you should go," Amir replied. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every word felt like a line drawn in concrete. The first man took a step toward him. Amir braced himself. He had been in fights before, bar scuffles, desperate moments in rough neighborhoods, but never with so much at stake. Before the man could close the distance, Layla lifted the whistle to her lips and blew. The sound was piercing, impossibly loud, bouncing off brick and metal and glass. Lights flicked on in an apartment above the shuttered shop. A window opened somewhere down the block. "Damn it," the second man hissed. He grabbed his friend's arm. "Let's go." For a moment, Amir thought the first man would resist. Instead, he spat on the ground and backed away, his eyes promising something he didn't say. They disappeared into the darkness, their footsteps fading. The woman slid down the wall, her knees giving out. Amir rushed to her side, crouching a careful distance away. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, breath hitching. "No, I don't think so. Thank you." Layla ran to her father, wrapping her arms around his waist. Amir hugged her back with one arm, his other hand still hovering, ready. "It's okay," he murmured. He wasn't sure if he was talking to Layla or himself. They waited until the woman's breathing steadied. Amir offered to call the police, but she shook her head again, wiping her eyes. "I just want to go home," she said. She stood, gathering her scattered belongings with trembling hands. Before she left, she looked at Amir, really looked at him. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "Yes," Layla said, fierce and immediate. "He did." The woman smiled, a fragile thing. "Then thank you. Both of you." By the time Amir and Layla reached the diner, it was closed. The lights were off, the chairs stacked upside down on the tables. Amir stared at the locked door, a familiar weight settling in his chest. "I'm sorry," Layla said, her voice small now. Amir knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said. Sometimes doing the right thing costs us something, but it's still the right thing." They walked home together in the drizzle that finally began to fall, the city quiet around them. Amir lay awake long after Layla fell asleep, listening to the rain tap against the window, wondering what tomorrow would bring. He had no way of knowing that somewhere across the city, in a glass tower glowing against the night, a woman was replaying the sound of a whistle in her mind, and asking questions that would lead her the very next day to a single dad who thought his courage had gone unnoticed. To be continued. Morning came too early. Amir woke before the alarm, the gray light of dawn seeping through the thin curtains of their apartment. For a few seconds he lay still, listening to the soft rhythm of Layla's breathing from the other room. Then the weight of yesterday settled back onto his chest, the closed diner door. The empty promise of a paycheck, the fear he had pushed aside long enough to get them home. He swung his legs off the bed and sat there, elbows on knees, rubbing his face. He would have to find something else. Anything. Construction, delivery, another diner. He'd been starting over since the day he buried his wife. He supposed he could do it again. The kettle whistled as he made tea, careful not to wake Layla yet. He stared at the steam curling up, thinking of the woman's face under the street lamp, the way her hands shook as she gathered her things. Thinking of Layla's voice, "Daddy, please help her," as if the world were simple and good and all you had to do was listen. A knock at the door broke the quiet. Amir froze. It was barely 7. No one knocked on his door at 7 unless something was wrong. He moved slowly, peering through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, tall and well-dressed in a charcoal suit that didn't belong in this building. His hair was neatly combed, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. Beside him stood a woman in a dark coat, her eyes hidden behind large sunglasses. Amir opened the door only a few inches, the chain still fastened. "Yes? Mr. Amir Hassan?" the man asked. "Yes. My name is Daniel Ross. I'm here on behalf of Miss Evelyn Carter." The woman stepped forward then, removing her sunglasses. Amir recognized her immediately, not from the street, but from the newsstands near the bus stop. Her face had stared back at him. From glossy magazine covers, from headlines about mergers and philanthropy and billion-dollar decisions, CEO found her attacker arrested. Tech giant's leader praised for calm response. His mouth went dry. "It's you," she said quietly. Before Amir could respond, Layla padded into the hallway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Daddy?" she said, then looked past him. Her gaze landed on Evelyn Carter, and her brow furrowed in concentration. "You're the lady." Evelyn's breath caught. She crouched slightly to meet Layla's eye level. "Yes," she said, "I am." Amir closed the door behind them once the chain was removed, the small apartment suddenly feeling even smaller with strangers inside. Evelyn looked around, not with judgment, but with an almost painful attentiveness, as if she were memorizing every detail: the worn couch, the cracked picture frame holding a photo of Amir, his wife, and a much younger Layla, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. "I'm sorry to come so early," Daniel said, "but Miss Carter insisted." "I needed to see you," Evelyn said after last night. Amir gestured awkwardly toward the couch. "Please, sit." They did. Layla climbed onto her father's lap, her head resting against his chest. Amir felt her small fingers curl into his shirt. I didn't tell the police your name, Evelyn said. I didn't even know it, but I described you. And your daughter. Her voice softened. They found the men. One of them had a record. The other broke down when he realized. There were cameras nearby. I'm glad you're okay, Amir said. It was the truth, simple and unadorned. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. You put yourself in danger, she said. For a stranger. With your child right there. Layla looked up at her. He's my dad, she said, as if that explained everything. Something like a smile flickered across Evelyn's face, then vanished. I haven't slept, she admitted. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't been there. And about what it cost you to be there. Amir hesitated. He hadn't planned to say anything. But there was something in her gaze, not pity but insistence, that made lying feel impossible. I lost my job, he said quietly, or I missed my shift. I assume that's the same thing. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Evelyn's eyes darkened. Because you helped me, she said. Because I took a shortcut, Amir replied, and because my daughter asked me to. Evelyn leaned back, exhaling slowly. I've spent 20 years building a company, she said, making decisions that affect thousands of people. I tell myself I know what courage looks like, but last night I realized I've been defining it from a very safe distance. She stood, walking to the window, looking out at the narrow street below. I had security, she continued, drivers, assistants, but I sent them away because I wanted to feel normal, and the moment something went wrong, it wasn't my money or my influence that saved me, it was you. Me. R said nothing. He didn't know what to say. I don't believe in coincidences, Evelyn went on. I believe in responsibility. So I'm here to ask what you need. Amir stiffened. I don't want charity. I didn't say charity, she replied, turning back to him. I said responsibility. She nodded to Daniel, who opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Amir's pulse quickened. My company runs a logistics division, Evelyn said. Warehouse management, distribution, supply chains. We're expanding locally. We need supervisors who understand hard work, who don't walk away when something isn't their problem. Amir frowned. I wash dishes. You protected a stranger with nothing but your voice and your spine, she said evenly. Skills can be taught. Character can't. Daniel slid the folder across the table. It's an offer, he said. Training included. Full benefits. A schedule that allows for childcare. Amir stared at the folder as if it might vanish. The numbers swam before his eyes. More money than he had made in years. Stability he hadn't dared imagine. This isn't because I saved you, he said slowly. Is it? Evelyn met his gaze. It's because you showed my daughter. She stopped herself, then corrected gently. Because you showed your daughter what kind of man you are, and because the world needs more of that. Layla leaned forward, peering at the papers. Does this mean we can still get pancakes? She asked. Evelyn laughed then, a surprised, genuine sound. Yes, she said. I think it does. Amir felt his throat tighten. He looked down at his daughter, then back at Evelyn. I don't know how to thank you. She shook her head. You already did. Later, after they left, Amir sat alone on the couch, the folder open on his lap. The rain had stopped, and sunlight streamed through the window, warming the room. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like a closed door. Across the city, in a sleek office high above the streets, Evelyn Carter returned to her desk. But she didn't start her day with emails or reports. She stared out at the skyline, thinking of a narrow street, a whistle, and a single dad who reminded her that power meant nothing without the courage to use it for someone else. And neither of them yet knew how deeply their lives were about to intertwine. Months later, Amir sometimes still felt like he was walking inside someone else's life. The warehouse smelled of cardboard and fresh paint, forklifts humming like patient insects as sunlight poured through the high windows. Amir stood on the platform overlooking the floor, clipboard in hand, calling out instructions with a calm authority that surprised even him. People listened, they trusted him. He had learned quickly, not just systems and schedules, but how to speak so others felt seen. At 5 o'clock sharp, he clocked out. No pleading with managers, no fear of being replaced. He drove home with the windows cracked, letting the late afternoon air wash over him. Layla was waiting on the steps of their new apartment building, backpack at her feet, legs swinging. When she spotted him, she jumped up and ran. You're late, she accused, smiling. By 2 minutes, Amir said, scooping her up. I checked. That still counts. Their apartment wasn't big, but it had light, real light, and walls that didn't feel like they were closing in. Layla spread her homework across the kitchen table while Amir cooked lentils and rice, humming softly. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was steady, and steady felt like a miracle. The phone rang just as they were sitting down to eat. Amir frowned. Few people called him anymore. He answered cautiously. Hello? Mr. Hassan, came Daniel Ross's familiar voice. Miss Carter was hoping you might be free this evening. Amir glanced at Layla. She raised an eyebrow in exaggerated suspicion. Is this about work? He asked. No, Daniel said. This is personal. An hour later, Amir and Layla sat in a quiet restaurant overlooking the river, the city lights reflecting in long, trembling lines across the water. Layla swung her legs beneath the table, sipping juice like she owned the place. Evelyn Carter arrived without ceremony. No entourage, no suit, just a simple sweater and slacks. She looked lighter somehow, as if she'd set something heavy down. I hope this isn't awkward, she said as she sat. I wanted to thank you properly. Both of you. You already did, Amir replied. Evelyn smiled faintly. I know, but gratitude doesn't expire. Dinner unfolded easily. Layla told stories. About school, about a classmate who cheated at math, about how her dad burned toast one morning and tried to pretend it was supposed to be that way. Evelyn listened like every word mattered. At one point, Layla leaned across the table. Do you still get scared? She asked Evelyn. Evelyn blinked. Sometimes, she admitted. My dad does too, Layla said matter-of-factly, but he helps people anyway. Evelyn looked at Amir then, really looked at him, and something unspoken passed between them. Not romance, not yet. Something deeper, recognition. After dinner, they walked along the river. The night was cool, peaceful. Amir watched Layla race ahead, counting lights on the bridge. I didn't just find you to say thank you, Evelyn said quietly. After that night, I started changing things. At my company, in my life, security policies, outreach programs, even how we define success. She stopped walking. You reminded me who I was before I became untouchable. Amir considered that. You didn't need reminding, he said. You just needed a moment. Evelyn nodded. There's one more thing. She hesitated, then continued. I'm starting a foundation. Not with my name on it. One that supports families, single parents especially, who step up when it matters. I want you involved. Not as a symbol, as a voice. Amir felt the familiar instinct to refuse, to shrink back. Then he thought of the whistle, of Layla's certainty. If it helps people, he said slowly, then yes. Evelyn smiled, relief softening her features. Years later, reporters would try to turn the story into something simple. A poor man saved a CEO. A child changed a billionaire's heart. Headlines loved clean lines and neat endings. But the truth was quieter. It was a single dad choosing courage when fear would have been easier. It was a child who believed helping was not optional. It was a woman with power learning to see again. And on some evenings when the city grew, loud and impatient, Amir would watch Layla asleep on the couch, a book slipping from her hands, and think back to that narrow street. One small voice had said, Daddy, please help her. And because he did, everything changed.